When looking for the king of podcasts, you're at the wrong channel.
Well, excuse me!
Looking for good ideas for life? You're far from good hands.
Hey, bud, what's your problem?
If you think the listener is always right, you're far from the right place.
Out of order! Even in the future, nothing works!
Hosted by a Northeasterner by birth, but a rebel by choice.
Are you threatening me?
If you want a host that floats between love and madness,
and we know the night is always gonna be here anyway. Thinking of you's working up my appetite. Looking forward to a little afternoon delight.
then play on and listen to Crazy Train Radio.
All right, guys, listen to this blues riff and B. Watch me for the changes and try and keep up, okay?
Within the gaming world, there are your general gamers, but then there are those that enjoy the dark underbelly of gaming. If you're one of those that enjoy the dark underbelly of gaming, we certainly got the place to send you. Scorpion Lair Games. That's right, Scorpion Lair Games is the creators of the true crime hit Killers, the card game. Let's not forget they also have Killers Clothing Company, their profiler game, and things like the 5-Minute Murder channel on YouTube. And we certainly can't forget the new book that is certainly a hit, Beyond the Headliners, True Crimes, Myths, and Legends. Make sure you visit Jeff and the Scorpion Lair Games on Facebook and everywhere today. Also want to give a quick thank you to our friends over at Ultra Pro, who is the leading manufacturer and supplier of sports, comics, and memorabilia storage. Whether it be card cases, sleeves, top loaders, or travel gear, you name it. We are also going to be working with Ultra Pro in the next few months to do some special giveaway packages for the holiday season coming up in a few months, so stay tuned. Make sure you check them out at ultrapro.com.
Hey, boils and ghouls, David Howard Thornton, Art the Clown himself, and you're listening to Crazy Train Radio. Choo choo!
Damn! Hi-ya!
Hey folks, it's your least favorite host in the podcast world, Croc, Jonathan Steele. And boy, do we have a good one for you today. Ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, children of all ages. Obviously, you've heard some of our stuff on true crime and all that kind of fun stuff. But also, we have a new one to add to the group. And he has a couple shows that he runs, one being Unforbidden Truth, started in 2020, which features interviews with convicted murderers survivors of violent crime, and so much more. And obviously, he has a new one he has been working on and starting up called Reflections from Within, the Mind of a Juvenile Offender. And he focuses that with Mr. James Wiley, who his story's been told on different forums, and that should be interesting as well. But let's go ahead and welcome our guest, who hosts both these shows, Mr. Andrew Dodge. So, Mr. Andrew Dodge from Unforbidden Truth, how the hell are you?
I'm pretty good. I'm super busy, but I'm good. How about yourself?
I can't complain. Nobody listens when you bitch and moan anyway. So, from chatting it up with you for the past couple weeks, it seems like you definitely are quite busy. But let's start with Unforbidden Truth. You apparently started it in 2020. So what got your interest in doing what you do?
Yeah, I started it in 2020, but I actually should mention that I was a part of another podcast before that, which was similar to Unforbidden Truth, which was called Criminal Perspective. And that was almost identical to what I do, except I don't have analysis and experts talking about what the inmates say at the end of the interview. So technically, I've been doing this since I want to say 16 or early 2017. But I've been corresponding and visiting with prisoners since 2010. I visited Texas Death Row, California Death Row. I visited Walla Walla State Penitentiary here in Washington. Yeah, I've done quite a bit in these almost 15 years of doing this.
So obviously you feature interviews with convicted murderers, survivors of violent crime, and so much more. So is there a particular angle you enjoy most in doing what you do?
Not really. No, I mean, honestly, I enjoy just doing the interviews regardless of who it's with. I mean, it's more convicted murderers than anybody because they're more easily accessible and more willing to talk, and it's a lot easier to get everything set up and than it is with other people like professionals or law enforcement officials, survivors or victims of violent crime. They're a lot harder to track down, but I am thinking outside the box these days and contacting anybody and everybody related to the world of true crime really to interview and have on the show.
Well, where did the fascination with true crime begin?
My late night, my late stepmom was a 911 dispatcher, and my dad was a cop, later detective, and he's retired now. So I basically had a knack for it ever since I was a kid, really, since we heard stories from my dad and my stepmom, because my mom and dad divorced when I was a baby, so they were together basically my entire life up until a few years ago, until she passed away. So I would hear stories at home about cases that my dad's worked and stuff like that. Of course, he retired when I was a baby, but he still talked about it. He still talks about it to this day, about cases he worked and whatnot. And I guess that kind of sparked an interest for me, and it just took off from there.
Well, what did Dad do post police career?
He worked for the Washington State Ferry System. Yeah, he
Okay.
was. He did a whole bunch of different things.
But it sounds like his time as an officer was a true passion for him as well, right?
Yeah, definitely. He was on there for like 20 plus years, I believe.
Right
Maybe
on.
close to 25.
Yeah, definitely a career well served. Well, I should mention it, when we were talking, you mentioned about a new project you are working on, Reflections Within, the Mind of a Juvenile Offender.
Yeah,
So
Reflections
what
from Within the Mind of a Juvenile Offender. Yeah, that's with juvenile mass murderer James Wiley and myself. James Wiley was 15 in 1990 and Thermopolis, I don't know how to say it, Wyoming, when he killed his stepmother and three brothers. And he's been in prison, or he's been incarcerated, I should say, since he was 15. He escaped from prison. He was caught again, sentenced again, doing life without parole. And it's basically a podcast that provides, I guess, insider analysis from a juvenile offender, like a juvenile mass murderer at that committed an infamous crime at a young age. He's going to be providing an analysis on other, high profile juvenile cases, everyday life. He's going to talk about his case in depth, his childhood in depth, the abuse and everything he went through. So he's a really interesting guy. We talk every day. We try to record as much as we can, and it's definitely a project that I'm really happy to be a part of and starting to get out there. And I definitely want to promote it as much as I can, because Unforbidden Truth has been around for 4 years now, and this just launched like 2.5 weeks ago.
Right on. So obviously James's story's been a part of a docu-series, I guess you would call it.
Yeah, a few of
And
them.
Kids Behind Bars, Life on Parole was the one that I've seen. But yeah, you're right. There's been a few different docu-series and stuff, because that's been a unique thing the past couple of years with true crime and all. And you obviously know the one guy I know quite well, and Jeff Ignatowski, who does a lot of true crime stuff, games, etc. But I'm curious to know, when you're recording these sessions with different criminals or with James or whatever the case is, what's the process like to set this up? Because obviously I would think you'd have to go through the corrections facilities and the states and the different, seems like a big process to set this stuff up.
Actually, no, believe it or not, it's not. The only time you got to do that is if it's for somebody that's really high profile. Like, I'm trying to think.
Would you say, like, for example, the Menendez brothers?
Yeah,
If they're high
possibly. Like
profile?
I was asked to do that for somebody in ADX Florence, Colorado, to ask the warden for their permission, and I'm like, I'm not going to do that, because I haven't asked for permission from anybody yet, because the federal prison system is way different than the state system. So the federal prison system, you do have to get permission to an extent. I mean, I can do it without asking anybody, but it's on them to ask people, or else they can get thrown to the hole or go to a different prison, something like that. I've had a few instances where people have gone to the hole that I've done interviews that are in the feds, and one guy was threatened to. They were going to take him to ADX Colorado because he was part of the Takashi 6ix9ine case. He was one of the alleged godfathers of the Nine Trey Bloods, and we were going to do an interview. And I guess right before we did the interview, the prison officials, I think the warden it was, or assistant warden, came and said if he did an interview, he would be sent to ADX Florence, where Hoover is and Jeff Ford and the Unabomber was. And so yeah, it's way different in the feds, but in the state system, I just set up interviews and that's it. There's no repercussions on my end or anything like that, because I'm technically not a journalist or a reporter or anything like that. I just have a podcast and that's it.
Right on. So, how much digging do you do when you're talking with these different folks? Because obviously, you have the stuff like through the court system, that you have their story. There's docu-series. There's different angles you can look for. So, how much digging do you think you have to do before you have these conversations?
Not much at all, honestly, because I don't like knowing a whole lot about somebody's case before I talk to them. Like, I'll write them based off of what I read, and that's it. I won't, because I don't want to research somebody for a long time and have them not talk to me, because then I feel like it's a wasted time and wasted effort, because I do have a 9 to 5 and I only have so many days off and so many hours off throughout the week. So yeah, I don't do research until they agree to an interview. Then I'm like, oh, okay, cool. So then I'll arrange my format around their case, obviously, and it'll be different for every single offender. But that's the only research I really do is after they agree to an interview and we set up a time and date. And even then, some people flake out, but it is what it is.
Yeah. What is the method behind the madness per se? As far as what you look at, are you open to all crimes, or are you just in the murderers, or what's is there a certain lane you like to fit in?
No, it's just crime in general, like preferably violent crime. But I've interviewed people that have been convicted of like one woman, a part of Criminal Perspective, we interviewed a woman that was part of like a Hurricane Katrina tax fraud ring or something like that. She's out of prison now. Her name is Bernetta Willis or something like that. Um, I've interviewed like white collar criminals. Um, it, it it just depends really if it's high profile or if it's a crime that anything anything to do with crime really, as long as it's not like a, I know it sounds hypocritical, but I do draw the lines of somebody that's just like raped a child or raped a woman, especially if they claim to be innocent, because it's much harder to have somebody on that is just a rapist or a pedophile and they just want to take the time to claim to be innocent. If I mean, there's obviously innocent people in prison, but most pedophiles and most rapists are gonna, I'm gonna lean towards, yeah, you're probably guilty, and I
Yeah.
don't want to
Good.
give them a platform.
No, I totally get that because I the past couple of years really started getting into the true crime and stuff, and thanks a fucking lot, Jeff. And I know he'll laugh when he hears that. It's all your fault, you bastard. No. But what I was gonna say is though, it's what I've learned about, you know, true crime and criminals and all that song and dance as well is even they have a code of ethics, if that makes sense.
Right.
So, it was funny you said that about, and I'm not making fun of pedophiles or rapists or anything like that, but it's like even criminals, there's these, you'll have folks, whether they murder people or they, rob a grandmother or they do this or they do that, whatever the case is. And even these criminals who were in jail for whatever the reason is, don't like pedophiles and they don't like, they don't like certain types of crime, which I find in a way kind of cool, like honor amongst thieves, if that makes sense, that they even
Right.
have standards.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, because even serial killers have like a hierarchy of crimes that they abide by and don't abide by. Like you can kill 100 kids or 100 women or 100 men, and as long as you don't rape them, there could be like a child molester or a child rapist there, and they could have it out for them, but they've killed like 100 men, 100 women, 100 children. Like in prison, it's different. Like child killers, especially death row. Death row is way relaxed. Like if you're a child killer, child rapist, like it doesn't really matter. Like you still get respect. You're not disrespected. You're not walked all over. At least in California, that is. But there's a moratorium on the death penalty, I believe now, and that's why they're shipping everybody around. But death row is definitely the safest place from what I hear when it comes to being in prison. General population obviously is probably the scariest place to be if you're like a snitch or a pedophile or something like that.
Yeah, the key is if they find out, and I would think 9 times out of 10,
Yeah, they will.
when
'Cause
they
there's
do
law
when they
libraries
do
there.
find out what you were involved in, it's not going to be good.
Yeah, yeah, because there's a law library there, and everybody's cases are, you can pull anybody's case up, and when you have nothing but time, you just get curious and you find out who's in there for what, and then you treat them accordingly, I guess.
Yeah, and I can't think of the guy's name. I've watched a lot of his stuff on YouTube and stuff. He was a jewel thief
Oh,
out of,
yeah, I know who you're talking about. Yeah, I've been meaning to do an interview with him. I forget his name, but he has a podcast, right?
yeah,
Yeah,
exactly. I'm Googling as I speak,
yeah,
but
I know
it's
who you're,
just
Yeah, I need to actually get a hold of him. I totally forgot about that. It's been like a year since I've spoke to him.
Yeah, but Larry Lawton,
What's his name?
Larry Lawton.
Okay.
Yeah,
Okay.
was the one I'm thinking of, and
Larry
it's
Lawton.
it's funny, especially his early stuff that he would be, like I said, he would talk about because was like an outsider to the mob, etc. But
Right.
you know what I mean? When you're in a life of crime, you come across people, people, etc. of different walks and stuff. And it was just fascinating to listen to him tell his story, whether it's from when he got caught or coming across, say, certain mobsters or coming across this one. I mean, like I said, you cross paths in that line of work or lack thereof, whatever you want to
Right.
consider it. And even when you go to jail, everybody knows somebody through somebody. There's a lot of connections there in that world, and
Right.
it's
Right.
just it was fascinating listening to him talk about how, say, pedophiles are treated or this one's treated, or I mean, just the mind of someone who was in crime at the time, that whole thing. So I always found it interesting from there.
Right. Yeah, definitely.
What do you have a particular favorite episode or topic that you covered on one of the shows, whether it be on Unforbidden Truth or with James or even the stuff he did beforehand?
Well, the Reflections from Within, there's only one official episode out yet. The other is a trailer, then the other is like there's a letter that he wrote to Taylor Swift, Donald Trump, and Tyreek Hill, that he wanted to get out there like messages to them. So there's not really many on Reflections from Within, but Unforbidden Truth, there's like 227 or 28 episodes, I think. So my favorite so far is Todd Colehep or Nico Jenkins. Todd Colehep is a mass murderer and serial killer who was killing in South Carolina, and then Nico Jenkins is a spree killer who killed 4 people in Nebraska. And Nico Jenkins is a 2-part interview. Todd Colehep is a 4-part interview, and it's about 4.5 hours worth of him going into detail about his childhood and the murders and claiming to have killed people in Mexico. Like he paid a lot of money to be trained to kill drug traffickers and stuff like that. And it's just a really interesting interview. And he talks about unsolved murders that he's a part of. And yeah, it's one of my favorites. But of course, it's the longest. So it's probably going to be the most interesting. You just got to force yourself to listen to an hour to an hour and a half at a time, or you
Exactly.
won't get it.
Well, also, I think I should mention before we wrap is apparently you have some merchandise from or for your show. So what kind of merchandise are we dealing with?
Yeah, I have for Unforbidden Truth, I have t-shirts, tank tops, coffee mugs, keychains, stickers, a sticker and bookmark packet. I think that's it for now. Yeah, and the merchandise has its own website, which I think reroutes to my website, but it's unforbiddentruth.org, I believe. But I have a link tree with all my, if you Google link tree Unforbidden Truth, all my stuff will pop up, all my links, Apple Podcasts, Instagram, whatever, whatever.
Well, I'll be including the links on all versions of this for people to go ahead and check it out if they so desire. But we are
Okay,
sitting
cool.
here. Yeah, exactly. Why not? But we're sitting here on 9/19. So what do you want to accomplish between now and the end of the year and going into 2025?
To be honest, I've told myself that I want to have 200 recorded interviews by the end of the year so I can take maybe 2 to 3 months off after the first of the year to dedicate towards this other podcast so I can release episodes more often then, and I can just have stuff in the chamber ready to go for Unforbidden Truth, not having to worry. All I got to do is record the before and after, and I don't have to do set up interviews. Like I am doing one a day minimum, and I have about 50 or 60 right now. So if I do about 4 or 5 a week, I think I should be fine by then, hopefully.
Well, Andrew Dodge, thank you so much. And folks, check out his stuff if you get a chance. Unforbidden Truth podcast.
Thank you. I appreciate you having me on.
Hey there, Friday fans. We know how much you enjoy the movies. Enjoy grabbing your Friday merchandise and interacting with the Friday family, whether it be at conventions or during our particular watch-alongs. Well, when you're looking to get yourself masks, why not check out our friends over at Camp Blood Customs out of New York State and order your specific custom mask from any of the films. All orders are made specifically. Your needs and wants are. Make sure you find Camp Blood Customs on Facebook, Instagram, and all over social media and order yours today.
This is Jennifer Lauren from Diamonds and Whiskey, and you are listening to Crazy Train Radio.